This is the Constructionist Podcast, where we take ancient stories, the person of Jesus, current events and topics, and help you construct a new Christian worldview that's relevant and loving to those around you. I'm your host, Kevin Bates. I'm a semiotician and community builder, looking at the signs of the times to build a better future together. You are tuned in to the Constructionist Podcast, and tonight we are continuing the topic of basically our existence, and we want you to be able to navigate through some topics in a framework of worldview. And so we want this worldview to be relevant and loving to people, and so we're reconstructing some things and constructing some things tonight and over the last several weeks. So we're in it every week, diving deep into developing an honest, loving worldview. So if you remember from previous podcasts, we've given you an outline of what we're following from the Belgian atheist philosopher Leo Apostel. And basically this outline is 6 points that we're walking through. We spent a couple of weeks on methodology and a theory of action, which we're continuing tonight. So a worldview is the fundamental cognitive orientation of an individual. So it has to do with your brain, how you think, and how you perceive the world. But it's also of society, which encompasses the whole of an individual or society's knowledge and point of view. So POV is definitely a perspective of how we look at the world. So our filters, our culture, our growing up, how we were raised, how we weren't raised, how we wanted to be raised, just our influences, nature and nurture, all of those things come into play when it comes to our worldview. So here's the framework. Number one, we explained in our first podcast on this topic, we explained the world as we see it. Now, 3 people here in Oregon seeing the world and explaining it as we see it. Well, that's pretty contextual. So yeah, take it for what it is. But it's our explanation of the world, so deal with it, right? Number 2 is where are we going? That's our futurology, is we had a whole couple of weeks on where the hell we are going. And so we wanted to talk through that. We talked about heaven. We talked about hell, the realities of heaven and hell. Do they exist? How do they exist? And then we dove right into ethical questions, how we should behave, our values, our virtues, where our virtues come from. Why are our virtues the way they are? Why are they articulated the way that we articulate them? So that was a great podcast. This is our second week on methodology and the theory of action. So how should we attain what we're talking about in our worldview? So that's the 4th point of Leo Apostel, the atheistic philosopher that came up with our structure. But then number 5, we're going to talk about the theory of knowledge. What is true? What is false? Objective truth, subjective truth, tacit knowledge, known knowledge, everything that we know as truth or knowledge. We are going to talk about the theories of that starting next week. So hopefully we'll spend a week or 2 on knowledge, and then we're going to put it all together, the constructed worldview and the building blocks, the origin, the construction, what we're doing with all of this information. And hopefully by the end of this series, you'll have the framework to come up with your own worldview. We're not asking you to adopt our thoughts totally, or rather the way we articulate our thoughts or our opinions or whatever. We want to give you a framework on how to do this and how to construct your own worldview. Now, I bet that what Shreya is going to present tonight is different than what I presented last week. Why? Because she's a different thinker. Number 1, she's a lot smarter than I am. But number 2 is she's a different thinker. She's coming from a different background with different influences. So her 6-point framework or her worldview is going to be different than my worldview. How she explains the world is from a different perspective than my perspective. So we're going to just put our worldviews up in the boxing ring tonight. And we're going to scrutinize both, hopefully not rip apart too much because I'm sensitive and we need to be careful of that, right? So in previous podcasts in this series, we mentioned this, that if we deconstruct ideas and we don't reconstruct ideas as we're deconstructing, we run the risk of basically becoming the very same thing that we were before. We deconstructed nothing. So when we deconstruct, we need to construct. It goes back to that adage, I want to be so different than I am right now, but I end up exactly the same. So if we're not putting building blocks together as we deconstruct and we're not constructing something, then we're going to end up before we deconstructed the values and the position and propositions that we ended up before we even began to deconstruct. So we have to do this in order to move forward. When our framework is disrupted, it can be painful, but we can construct. Don't allow the pain to not or to hinder you from constructing something to move forward. So I want to encourage us this to be our thinking space. This is not some space that we are going to just reiterate truths that you have to absorb and just take on our opinion. We're not making, what can I call it? Just replicas of ourselves out there. We want you to think for yourself. We do have a chat box that we want you to chat with us and spend time with us. Even during the week, if you're listening to this off of Thursday night, we want you to join us in conversation then as well. So this is our thinking space tonight, the praxeology or methodology of the theory of action. So a little note to our supporters to support us. Number one, we want you to listen to this broadcast each and every week. We want you to interact with us each and every week. We want you to send us hate mail, emails, like love mail. Send it all to us. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear what's inside, even if it's just raunchy and ugly. We want to know what it is so we can help you through it. That's what we're about. We're just digging through the muck sometimes. So if you don't agree with something that we're saying, then say it. I want to hear it. Why? Because the things that I believe need to be tested. I want to test them, refine them, come to good conclusions. And if you sound stupid in those emails, don't be afraid. I probably will call it stupid. Not you stupid. I'll call maybe the idea stupid. So that's the way we act around here. But we want to interact. Don't be afraid to interact with us. But more importantly, just spend time listening, just ingesting, thinking for yourself. You can support us financially, of course, with that introduction. Maybe you don't want to, but you can support us financially. You can go to our website, resonatelife.org, under the Give tab. And that's going to be in our show notes as well, the website. You can go to that or on our link on our Resonate Christian Church Instagram page. You can connect into resonatelife.org and give it to us financially. All right, let's cover the theory of action for a moment. I love this topic. Why? Because it's tangible. It's definitely gets a little formulaic, so I don't want to get too formulaic because we want to live in the round, not in the square box. So not everything's a formula, but it can be sent through a formula, a pipeline of logic. So a theory of action. What is a theory of action? Well, I believe that there's questions that need to be answered. And when it comes to a worldview, as we talked about last week, there's universal questions. And those universal questions have been answered for a very long time in different eras of time. So since the 1970s, we've had an evangelical worldview, maybe the 60s, since Billy Sunday, Billy Graham, some of those days of like the missiologists that were out there back in the 60s and 70s, they developed an evangelical worldview. So there is a definite, concrete Christian worldview that a lot of people subscribe to that's just maybe needs to be broken up a little bit. I mean, it's caused them maybe a lot of hurt and pain. And all of a sudden you wake up and go, what? 7 days of creation? That's not literal? Are you kidding me? That's a poem? I mean, I've always believed in the 7 days of creation. And if I don't believe in the 7 days of creation, what happens to the entire Bible? Is Jesus still on the throne? Did Jesus die for my sins if the 7 days of creation is broken down? Well, sometimes a worldview, and especially a, quote, biblical worldview, can become so strict that we don't have an allowing space. That becomes very hindering to people. It's not loving, and it definitely is demeaning and shaming. So we've lived under that kind of worldview for a very long time. We want a compassionate, loving worldview. And so these questions are universal, but yet we need to allow, we need to open the question and almost leave our answers open-ended. For what? Not for just some other opinion or I don't agree with that. We need to allow for grace. We need to allow for love and grace to enter into the picture, that if I have a worldview, opinion, or truth that I hold on to, grace has to find itself somewhere before that worldview or opinion. Grace is first. Jesus is first, then some philosophy of life. So make sure that we have that in the correct order, that this is a philosophy of life, the worldview idea. It's not Jesus. And you don't need a worldview in order to believe in Jesus. You have Jesus. And if you have Jesus, Jesus is enough. Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Not I'm the way, the truth, and the life plus a biblical Christian worldview. No, Jesus is enough. And so if you put your faith in Jesus and you say whatever they're talking about is a bunch of bunk, it's okay. So, but we want to answer some of these questions to come up with a philosophy of worldview, how we filter our decisions, why we do the things that we do, why we think the way that we think. So the first question is, where did I come from? That's a universal question. Some people think that we just came from, maybe a being before, like a reincarnate situation, right? Where I was a bug before, and now I'm a human now, and I'm going to become a bug later. I don't know. I mean, it's a little more nuanced than that. But maybe your origin, you believe, is a reincarnate. That's a very basic. I know that was very evangelical Christian of you. I'm sorry. So, see, stuck in a box. So let me back up. Maybe you have a different kind of origin. Maybe you just don't think you came from anything. Maybe you believe that humans were just, well, you can take some views that we were planted as like seeds from aliens. You can take that alien theory or, the monster theory of evolution or something like that. I believe in a theory of evolution. So I believe in a progressive evolution. So that's where we came from, according to my worldview. Destiny, where are we going? So if we came from something, we got to go to something. And so where are we going? Are we staying here? Are we blowing off the earth? Are we becoming nirvana, becoming at one with Brahma? Are we going up into the clouds with Jesus and we're going to sing in harps and diapers on top of clouds? What are we going to do? Or are we going to sit in hell because, me and every singer that's ever said, come on, let's just, die and go to hell together. All those songs about or statements about that, right? That we end up in hell with the pitchfork guy that's stabbing us with the gnashing of teeth, and we have boils all over our bodies, and we're sitting there in Dante's Inferno, frying ourselves for eternity. Well, that sounds like a loving God. But where are we going? That's the question. So where did I come from? Where are we going? Why am I here? Why in the world am I here? I mean, I've determined where I'm going. I've determined where I've come from. But why am I even existing? That's a universal question of all worldviews. And then how should I live? Those are my values. It's kind of like the filter where I filter my life through virtue. I filter my life through values. And value clarification is really important. I think that everyone needs to go through a moral inventory, value clarification, probably every year. We're just going to sit down. That's going to be our new resolution exercise. It's not going to be hey, I wish I could lose 10 pounds. Hopefully you want that too. But every year, maybe you should sit down with your values, virtues, and say, am I following these? Do I want these? Am I these? Should I try for more in this area or that area? How should I be? I told my daughter tonight, you know what? She did great in her cross-country race. She's getting great grades, almost straight A's. I think straight A's right now. She's just really doing awesome in school. She's this 8th grade cross-country runner, and she's always trying to break her PR. She broke her PR today and on track or on the cross-country race. And I told her tonight, it's like you can be a cross-country star, you can have straight A's, you can be good at math, but if your character is not good, that's the most important thing I want, is for your character to be good, your virtues to be good. And I just kept telling her that tonight as she's like, do you think I'm enough, Dad? Did I do good enough? I'm like, you did great. Just keep focusing on your virtues and your values and who you are as a person. That's most important. I told her that in kindergarten, when she was 5 years old. So then truth. What is truth? Not only how should I live, but then what should I live by? I mean, do we even believe in truth anymore? That's hopefully next week. All right. So our traditions, the way we were raised, our culture, how we were the culture we were born in. Um, I come from a position of privilege, and I'm willing to admit that and embrace the consequences of that. And honestly, I need to approach people with sensitivity. I need to approach people with honor and care because my tradition, my culture shapes my worldview a tremendous amount. So I had to work through my worldview with honesty, asking honest questions. Is this just a privileged worldview? A privileged worldview would be something like I need to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get to work. And that's how I become successful. That's it. That's a privileged worldview position. But we forget that our boots were given to us by our parents and they're strong and they're leather with good soles. And our straps are really long and strong. And those came from our grandparents. And so just our families of origin sometimes can give us and our ethnicity and everything can give us a very strong privileged position in life. We need to be careful about how we use that privileged position in our worldview and how we think of the world. Because sometimes, when you're rich and famous, you think a worldview that's rich and famous. And not everybody is rich and famous. I mean, I'm not rich and famous, but I know people who are rich and famous, and they think through a lens of rich and famous. So we need to be very careful with our tradition, our culture, our position. And so so it influences a tremendous amount. So when we answer these questions, that's great, but philosophy on a page is philosophy. The answer to these questions are just answers. And if we don't put them into practice, then what good are they? And I go back to that Rick Warren statement years and years ago. Rick Warren, the old preacher from Saddleback. I know he's turned the church over to some other person, but he used to be a preacher down in California. And he said that when basically the gospel is not lived out, it's not tangibly lived out in practical ways, right? Then it's not good news anymore. It's a tragedy story. It just becomes words on a page. The same is true for a biblical worldview. You can take the gospel and all the scriptures and you can develop answers to these questions, but if you don't do anything with them, if you don't play it out, if you don't act it out, at least act it out, then it just becomes just words on a page. It just becomes worthless jargon. And I think that's what a lot of worldview ideas have become. It's just worthless jargon. And we end up not believing what we actually were told or develop worldviews out of. I mean, honestly, when we start talking about hell, or you talk about spiritual warfare, or you talk about heaven and the traditional ideas of heaven, hell, and spiritual warfare, you almost kind of end up laughing after a while. It's like, have I just hook, line, and sinker just believed this stuff without any thought or critique or scrutiny? I've just believed heaven was a certain way and hell was a certain way. But the problem is those shape our decisions today. All right, so here's the answers that I came up with for these questions. I'm going to quickly answer them. And then Sheree's going to take it. She's going to take the rest of this podcast, and she's going to go through hers, and then we're going to scrutinize hers. We're going to just work over her language and her words, and then we're going to send it through our formula, our theory of action formula. And so where we're getting to is this, keeping the end in mind. If I do this thing, then we will see that. If I do this thing, then we will see that happen, which will lead to this, and which will result in that outcome that we want to see. So if I do this thing, it will result in an outcome. That's basically where we're headed. So if I actually implement my worldview, we'll have an outcome, hopefully, that's healthy and not toxic. All right, so origin, where did I come from? This is what I wrote. I am created in God's beauty and image. Human beings were created over a long period of time through a natural process of evolution. I just lost half the audience there. I mean, anybody that sometimes believes in anything that's not exactly 7 days of creation, that's a literal translation of Genesis 1-3, sometimes you just lose them. But, I don't believe in a literal creation story. So, burn me at the stake, I guess. Human beings were created over a long period of time through a natural process of evolution. The creation narrative is the Hebrew poem collection in Genesis 1 through 3. They are repeated in a creation myth through scripture to show us that God's present and that God is present and continual from beginning to end. Now, here's an addition that I added because Sharia and her thoughts into my worldview. My thoughts, my attitude, my emotions, my reactions, and my intentions are mostly determined from my origin culture of privilege, which I recognize and am sensitive to as I approach and interact with others. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm from. This is where I'm going.
How about Kevin, for the sake of, let's have Sharia do her first one, and then we can walk back and forth.
Do you think that's Sharia's decision?
I think in terms of flow, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, so I'll read mine. Okay. Well, we're never going to get through. I just know we're never going to get through. Anyway, okay, it's okay. So let me read origin, and then you read origin twice. Okay, so here's mine twice. Second time. I am created in God's beauty and image. Human beings were created over a long period of time through a natural process of evolution. The creation narrative is the Hebrew poem collection in Genesis 1 through 3. They are repeated in a creation myth through scripture to show us that God is present and continual from beginning to end. My thoughts, attitude, emotions, reactions, intentions. My thoughts, attitude, emotions, reactions, and intentions are mostly, not always, but mostly determined from my origin culture of privilege, which I recognize and am sensitive to as I approach and interact with others. Whew.
Right. Where did we come from? I believe that humans are created by God through evolution. We are from the earth and part of the earth, an interbeing with everything. I come from a culture that tells me I am separate and superior, and a biblical tradition that tells me I am interconnected. And it's hard to embody that biblical voice. Would you like me to read a second time?
Absolutely. I need to hear those words again.
Okay. I believe that humans are created by God through evolution. We are from the earth and part of the earth, an interbeing with everything. I come from a culture that tells me I am separate and superior, and a biblical tradition that tells me I am interconnected. And it's hard to embody the biblical part.
Why?
Because I think culture speaks a whole lot louder. And I think the biblical tradition gets co-opted and then shouted out by greater culture.
So the culture speaks that you're superior, but the biblical narrative speaks community, interconnection, interrelationship.
I think so.
But when we're superior, we're self-reliant.
Yeah.
So it's an issue of self-reliance versus interdependence. So you're the one who brought up culture of privilege. Is that what you're speaking in superiority? Your culture of privilege is superior. Okay. Have you thought about using that word privilege or culture within that?
She does use culture.
I use culture. I did not use privilege, and that wasn't necessarily a conscious choice to avoid the word.
Yeah, because a lot of people are afraid of that word.
Right. Yeah, no, I can own it. I do have a lot of privilege.
Yeah, because I mean, I have white privilege. When I adopted two children, I took enough classes
Yeah.
pre all of the political sniping of,
Right.
white privilege, the words, right? And so pre all of that, 12 years ago, I was taking classes on racism and white privilege and how I had white privilege. So, I mean, my knowledge and belief in white privilege goes way back, at least more than a decade now of studying it. So yeah, I think that we need to, I guess, recapture that word in our teaching. Yeah.
To outright acknowledge it.
Yeah, totally. Just because it's been, I guess, politicized or fearfully politicized. Like you can't use that, like, well, that's what white sensitivity is all about. So you can't use that word because you're afraid you're going to offend, some winger out there. Okay, yeah, good.
My only thought was, at the same time, Kevin brought forward the why, and expounding on the why is important for origin, because that is what is our actual origin, is the why.
Okay. Can you give me an example of where you see that, or where you're looking for more?
Oh, like why are you being told something other than the truth?
Oh, yeah.
Or why not the truth, but like, yeah, I guess the truth for you, but why?
Yeah.
What is the block? I think you answered it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But just adding that in there to the why.
Privilege wants to protect privilege.
Yeah, and then like you and adding to, I think something you were speaking to was what's it called? Very human-centric history.
Yeah.
Anthropocentric history. There it is. The that you were trying to take that away in your origin, so that first you said humans, and then part of creation. So really hitting hard that humans are a part of the created order and does not stand above but stands with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How about use in the end there, instead of something that, because it is hard to embrace interconnectivity, interrelationship dependence, interdependence. Instead of just stating that obvious, maybe say a more proactive type intention, like set your intention with the difficulty, that just acknowledging the difficulty. Yes, that is difficult and has been for millennia. Since, I guess, the first murder. So I guess that would be an obvious thing. Acknowledge it, the difficulty, yet set the intention, maybe. Like, what are you going to do with the difficulty? Or what are you going to do with interconnectivity or interdependence? Good.
Right.
Okay. Should we go to destiny?
Sure.
Okay. So mine twice, and then Sharia twice. Destiny. This is answering the question, where am I going? God is coming here, and I am returning back to where we all started. In the end, heaven and earth comes to In the end, heaven comes to earth, and the recreation narrative is brought to full expression. A new heaven, a new earth, a new, quote, garden is built, preserving my current recreative actions and demanding my current preservation of the ecology around me. In the meantime, after death and in the meantime after death and the final judgment, I'll embrace the mystery of Paul's words: when I am absent from the body, I'm at home with the Lord. Twice. I forgot the twice. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So where am I going? God is coming here, and I am returning back to where we all started. In the end, heaven comes to earth, and the recreation narrative is brought to full expression. A new heaven, a new earth, a new, quote, garden is built, preserving my current recreative actions and demanding my current preservation of the ecology around me. In the meantime, after death and the final judgment, I'll embrace the mystery of Paul's words: when I'm absent from the body, I'm at home with the Lord. So that's with all of your two inclusions of what your scrutiny last week. Okay, Sharia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Where are we going? I believe that God is here, and while I hope that God will make all things right, I have no way of knowing what happens after death. What I can do is build the world I want to live in, bringing peace and making right what I can, and participating in the harmony and recreation of the world around me. Number 2.
Twice.
I believe that God is here, and while I hope that God will make things right, I have no way of knowing what happens after death. What I can do is build the world I want to live in, bringing peace and making right what I can, and participating in the harmony and recreation of the world around me.
Okay, one more time.
I believe that God is here. While I hope that God will make all things right, I have no way of knowing what happens after death. What I can do is build the world I want to live in, bringing peace and making right what I can, and participating in the harmony and recreation of the world around me.
I needed to do a Lectio Divina on that, I guess, 3 times. Okay, so number one, you just crushed my first sentence. I said God is coming here. Just left hook, like God is already here. It's like God is not here. God is coming here at some point. I mean, you could actually interpret it that way. So I just edited my version and said God is here, and I'm returning back to where we all started.
Right. If God is already here, where is there to go? We're all already here.
Exactly. So so God is here, and you have no idea what happens after life after death. Yep. So what is heaven to you?
I don't know, man. That's the part that, I hope God is going to make things right somehow.
Okay. Like, do you believe that heaven and earth come together in a new creation?
I think that's what the text says. Yeah.
Like an N.T. Wright version of recreation where heaven and earth come together and just kind of, I don't know, a massive, bigger ball is built. I don't.
That must be it.
Explain to me, God is here.
I think God inhabits all of us. And
is that Paisley?
That is Paisley. She's annoyed that I'm paying attention to something not her.
God was inhabiting something in Paisley at that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So God inhabits all of us. Yeah.
Yeah. But is God in the trees and the rocks and the plants too?
Well, that's very pantheistic.
Maybe.
What is that?
Pantheistic?
I know. But... Yeah. Careful there, Sharon. That's a hard one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Textually, I think it's hard to build a case for that one.
Sure.
I think
Case for what one?
Like God is here. Albeit spirit,
Yeah.
Spirit lives inside of you, very namaste-esque.
Right.
But what do you think, Jake, when something is nuanced and you capture it, and that's good for your soul, is that still okay?
When something's nuanced and you capture it and it's good for your soul, is that still okay?
Yeah, for example, I have a certain version of speaking in tongues, an interpretation, a thought, and a version of interpretation. But if somebody takes the nuance of that they can speak in tongues and that grows them closer to God or closer to themselves, is that still okay?
Depends on what it is.
Well, I just gave you that example.
Yeah, I think Sharea's God is here. That is, I think, more healing than the concept of speaking in tongues, which has been more divisive.
Yeah.
Yes, but both show the inhabitant God.
Are you familiar with Richard Rohr's The Universal Christ?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Gave it to the Pope.
Richard Rohr gave it to the Pope.
Right.
No, I didn't give it to the Pope. Richard Rohr gave it to the Pope. Yeah.
Yes.
Here,
I
read
think
this.
That's really the direction I'm thinking in, and it's been long enough since I've read it that I can't just like give you all the main points, but like
give me one.
Christ is in all things.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So God is here. Christ is in all things.
Right. Yet the reason why I brought up speaking in tongues and God inhabits all of us, both are saying the same thing. So just one is kind of expressed in a outward fashion versus just a stated fashion. But Jake, you said, well, you would have a hard time with the text proving Sharea's first sentence, God is here. But it's not a toxic sentence.
Not toxic at all. And so just to have more like breadth around that is that God inhabits each of us. I think could be some more like definition of what here means, because I think that opens the door for lots of theologies and lots of religions, I would say.
It's warfare theology. Yeah, it can be warfare theology.
Not even warfare theology.
That's a darker direction.
Well, it can.
Yeah, I see that.
I think I'm more going with like pantheism or I mean, the universal Christ with Rohr tickles at that Christ is in all religions, and that through virtue and through service and through gratitude and generosity, we see the characteristics of Christ in every major religion on the face of the planet. And so is how is a part of that thought. Yeah. That's a very small part, but what I'm going down is that having more definition of what do you mean by here, is that the namaste idea that I bow to the God that's inside of you.
The Christ in me recognizes the Christ in you.
Yeah,
namaste.
Christ in me recognize.
Yeah, namaste.
So we have the same exact sayings as Hindus, right?
So let me encourage something. Is I really appreciate Richard Rohr, Sharia, and you brought him up. So maybe with your statement there, go back to Richard Rohr's material and just kind of flesh that out and bring it to our last podcast, because I think that would be a healthy kind of parsing out of what you're trying to say. Because I get what you're trying to say, and I everything else that you said, of course, is rock star, but that one idea that Jake is on. To make sure. And maybe you can help me with mine then too, because I say the same thing. Although mine was toxic. That mine was, God is coming here one day. He's out there somewhere. He's coming one day. And so therefore we're just left puppies on the earth trying to fend for ourselves. So I like the more nuance of God is already here and present, but then that runs a risk of, well, how present?
In those rocks, in those trees,
are
we
omnipresent?
Or are we in the eyeball of God?
Nice. I know we don't want to use them, but I mean, how about this? So my mother-in-law, if we use the parental figure of God, right? If we talk about the parental idea of God and relate it to being a parent, right? My mother-in-law, when Amanda and I were struggling, Amanda and I were just talking about this today, this morning, in fact, when we were really struggling and we really needed some extra help, we were all stressed out, lots of things were going on. My mother-in-law, she said, we'll just come over there. We'll live there for a while and help you. Right? I went, I don't think that's necessary, but we love you. I thank you for loving us. I didn't think it was necessary, and we got our crap together and figured it out. But we might have needed that kind of help. My wife's brother, my brother-in-law, has needed help in the last couple of years, and my mother-in-law packed her stuff up, sold everything, and moved to Georgia to be and help her son. Does God have to be present everywhere? I mean, does my neediness theology, my scarcity theology determine my omnipresence of God? Is that where that actually comes from?
That's a big question. Can I rephrase it to make sure I got it?
Yeah.
Are you saying that if we have a scarcity mindset, we don't have the things that we think we need?
Yeah.
So then we have to put God in the gaps, put God
in my neediness. God is here. God is for me. But do I then make up my scarcity at that point? Do I perpetuate my neediness?
Because then if your scarcity goes away, so does God.
Of course. So God has to be with me, in me, around me. He has to be omnipresent because I need God. I need him to wipe my butt and feed my face. He promises, those are the promises of God. But I mean, let's say God is yeah, I know. But honestly, I just think it's something to think about. Maybe, anyway, that's a whole nother day. Okay, let's go to our purpose. Whew. Okay, purpose. My purpose and mission is to illuminate, activate, and animate the Christ in everyone I meet. That comes from my mentor, Leonard Sweet. From one of my good friends. Huh?
Also, God is here.
God is here, yeah. Kyle Bostock, my friend Kyle Bostock, said the gospel is, and this is kind of a summary of what he said, the gospel is not about me saving the lost, not a moral ethic, nor a hidden spirituality. The gospel is an announcement that Jesus is our Savior. I changed the last phrase. Jesus is our Savior. My purpose and mission is to illuminate, activate, and animate the Christ in everyone I meet. The gospel is not about me saving the lost, not a moral ethic nor a hidden spirituality. The gospel is an announcement that Jesus is our Savior.
There it is right there. The Christ in me recognizes the Christ in you.
Namaste, Sharon. Namaste.
Okay.
Dude.
Why am I here?
Why are you here?
Why are we here? Tell us, Sharia.
I'm here to show love and to continue learning how to love more. I don't quite have this sentence figured out the way I want it exactly, but I think humans are here to play.
To play?
Yeah.
Pickleball, I hope?
Sure. And
I've never played
I don't
pickleball
have
in
it
my
fleshed
life.
out, but I think work is a part of that.
Oh.
But I think play is the greater posture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, half my job is janitorial and maintenance, and so you're calling that play?
Humans are here to be playful.
I'm a pastor too, so that's half my job is janitorial maintenance. I'm kidding.
But it feels that way sometimes.
I'm playing. Okay, so our job or our mission or our purpose is to play?
Well, I started with I'm here to show love and continue learning how to love more.
That last sentence, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that last sentence.
Is?
She hasn't quite figured it out yet.
Yeah,
okay.
I haven't figured out my wording, but we're here to play and to enjoy things and to learn and experiment and hopefully arrive at more love.
Well, I kind of like the way that sounded just right there.
It's great.
It kind of came back to it. Well, I appreciate your emphasis on love. That's good.
I would like to see our duty, job, whatever, is to love and learn more what love is. Perhaps a buy in there would be nice.
Does that get too much into the formula that we're going to do?
I think that I trust you, and so what you say I'm going to love is when you know somebody or know their intention or know them for a while. I think that is an easier proposition to absorb than someone saying I'm here to love, right?
Right.
Because we don't know their fruit. We don't know what comes out of their actions. And so I think Kevin talks about illuminate,
activate, animate,
and
slender sweetisms.
Yeah. And so how do you show love? To be careful to not just, I know you're not,
by being loving.
Yes. And to not like just put the Christianisms out of our duty here is to love. How?
Yeah, and that's where it starts to get into the next question.
It does. I get that.
Yeah.
I think you have to have some parameter. But definitely, yes. But you're right. It does go right into the next question.
Yeah.
About values.
Yeah.
So values I live my life. So I've completely changed this from last week. You guys just ripped it to shreds, and I just went, oh, just crap. Just crap. Okay, so now I just came up with something different. So maybe it needs to go under a little more scrutiny. I live my life in the virtues of 2 Peter 1, 5 through 7. This is why you must make every effort to add moral excellence to your faith, and to moral excellence knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control endurance, and to endurance godliness, and to godliness affection for others, and to affection for others love. Just rip it.
The biblical text. You want me to tear it apart?
Just rip it to shreds. No, I threw that in there on purpose because that's all I could come up with is just a scriptural value.
It's solid.
That I would just kind of just land there and steep there for a while. Okay, I live my life in the virtues of 2 Peter 1, 5 through 7. This is why you must make every effort to add moral excellence to your faith, and to moral excellence knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control endurance, and to endurance godliness, and to godliness affection for others, and to affection for others love. Shreya?
Yep. I'm editing a word. Okay.
Oh, real time.
How should I live? For me, it comes down to showing love and leaving it better than you found it.
Like a campsite.
Yeah. But I think showing love involves allowing others to be fully themselves, and treating them the way they want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily, the golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated, but honestly, not everybody wants to be treated the way I want to be treated.
Yeah, especially if you're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. One more time.
How should I live? By showing love and leaving it better than I found it. And I think showing love involves allowing others to be fully themselves and treating them how they want to be treated. And then I didn't really expound upon leave it better than you found it. But I think that kind of gets more into the action piece.
I think that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Read it to me again, slowly.
Showing love and leave it better than you found it. Showing it love.
I would change your in to by.
Oh, okay.
Was that like light bulb, or was that an bummer?
No, that was you're saying showing love by leaving it better than you found it?
I think
that was an sweet. I like it.
Oh. Colleen Thompson likes it as well. She loves it.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you a question about leaving it better than you found it. Leaving it?
Well, now that we're showing love by leaving it better than we found it, we're leaving them. We're leaving all things better than we found it. It is just
fine. It is all inclusive.
Well, you can bring a human element to it, and you could just describe what it is, what you're saying. You could say it/them.
By leaving all of creation.
Yeah.
It all. Leaving it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So maybe something there might be more descriptive. Because if you just say them, then okay, I don't have to do anything with the earth.
Right.
If you say it kind of
that's
dehumanizes
not a respectful way to talk about humans.
Well, but then people say, oh, what's it? Well, that's not a human. so I don't have to leave humans better than I found them.
Right.
Right. Actually, there is something that I want to bring up just really quick, because I think that this is important, and we're parsing words and we're talking about nuances of sentences and stuff. But honestly, I read an article. A friend of mine sent me an article this last week, and I was just dumbfounded that this article was written, and how it was written, and why it was written, and how did this get past the editor, of the magazine. I just sat there and I was like, who is this, and what theology is this? And I had to come to the conclusion that real poor theology actually starts with passion and belief. Honestly, like, that people have passions and they have belief that are very strong in certain ideas and thoughts, and they believe that they are doing the right thing. And it sometimes is a fully loaded freight train one way, and trying to get people on that train. And it's a heavy train to stop. Sometimes that train can't be stopped, and people literally get hit all along the way. So this article started out with, Jesus calls us to love our enemies. And then it defined enemy a little bit as people. And they took the adage that I believe, right? I believe that you cannot separate somebody's sin from the person, right? Like, I can't say something like this, well, love the sinner, but hate the sin. That's like, that's just a cop out. Right. You can't do that, right? So somebody's actions are very closely related and are who they are, at least at minimum, an expression of who they are from the inside, and an expression of the lack of knowledge, and sometimes just their ignorance, or sometimes just their mistakes. It's just who we are collectively, all encompassing. And this person used that idea that I have embraced with, like, loving
more
people,
openness than...
people. Yeah,
right.
I've embraced this thought that I'm going to love people, and they're going to do things and be a certain way that I'm going to struggle with, or I'm not going to struggle with, or whatever. It's not my job to sit there and parse their life and their actions and their occupation, their lifestyle. It's my job to love them. And how do I do that? And how do I find inroads to do that? That is my job as a Christian. And so when Jesus says, love your enemies, then this person said, well, you can't separate sin from the sinner. So your enemy, then, and I also believe that if it has flesh and blood, it is not our enemy. So that separates me from this article writer, because he believed that our enemies are people. And so he said, you can't separate the sin from the sinner. And so when Jesus said, love your enemies, he put people in that category of enemy. Well, I understand where he was going with that, and I understood it to a point, right? But then he said, loving your enemies included hate. Point blank, just said it included hate. And loving, part of loving was hating. And so if somebody's doing something that you disagree with, that loving somebody means that you hate them because they act repugnant towards God. And so he brought up some, examples of some, very extremist groups of certain religions and stuff. And he was using very extreme examples of this. And he was going down roads that I was just completely shocked that he was going down roads. His conclusion was, when Jesus said to love people, that he meant within that we hate people as well, certain people. That was his conclusion.
Do you love them enough to hate them?
Do you love them enough to hate them? And I just sat there and I was like, where is this guy coming from? And I read it over and over. I've read it so many times, looking for the nuance, looking for the inroad. What did this person actually mean? And this is a very, very, very popular publisher and website and pastor and such. Very influential person. Do you love people enough to hate them? And I was just blown away. And I go, where does this come from? Where is this coming from? And I had to come to the conclusion that it came from this person's worldview. This person has a worldview that is skewed. It's somewhere along the way, their belief and their passion or their passions got ahead of their virtues. And so the virtue of love needs to stay intact as the primary. Loving your neighbor is exclusively the route to go, the road to take, exclusively the action to carry out. Love your neighbor. But when our passions get ahead of that virtue, that's when hate can enter the picture. And then when we start nuancing and mixing, musing words together and looking for the nuances of old adages, when we add old adages, love the sin, hate the sinner, we use that as like a theological premise. That's a theological premise for some people. And then when we counteract that with, no, you can't separate that. Well, I meant that as when I say you can't separate sin and sinner, that means that you love people regardless of what they're doing and how they're acting, period. You love people and you figure out how to do it, even though you might find it like, whoa, I can't agree with that, or I don't deal with that very well, or whatever. That has more to do with you than it has to do with them. And so we need to figure out how to love people. So our worldview, in especially virtue, sometimes our passions get ahead of our virtues. And that's where we get all skewed. That's what we see in the world today with nationalism and all kinds of very extremist behaviors when in Christianity. It's kind of a common thing now. Passions getting ahead of virtues. And so hate can get in front of love if we're not careful with how we are embodying our worldview. That is all to say. Thanks for that, Shreya. That's good. Simple. All right, let's go to truth. Do we have some truth?
I don't. We didn't do truth for you. I don't believe.
I think I read it, and
we get there.
We got there by reading it. So here's my truth. Truths that guide my principles are empirical. They're all subjective. Any objective truth is truly unseen. Yet when given a glimpse, it can only be understood through what Paul explained, the things that God has made. My family, community, and friends exist, work, and play in normative realities. Now we're going to talk about what communal hermeneutic is and communal truth. The Bible is inspired fully by God and inspired fully by humankind. It is the mashing of beauty, perfection, and the authority in the Word of God with the fallibility, influence, and culture in the world of humankind. Shreya?
Yep. I believe that I can only know a portion of the truth, and this inspires me to seek multiple perspectives so that I can see a bigger portion of what is true.
I like that.
One more time?
Please. Just let that steep, because we're not going to cover it until next week.
I believe that I can only know a portion of the truth. This inspires me to seek multiple perspectives so that I can see a bigger portion of the truth.
So I was not going to bring it up till next week, but can I just bring up something? Just a little preview. Okay. So I finally figured out through a conversation with a friend of mine why they believe that we can have objective truth.
Okay.
Okay. Because no one in my circle believes that we really can have objective truth. We're kind of Kierkegaardian in that way, right? Where all truth is filtered through the subject, the complex subject of our context, right? And so it's subjective truth. We can ride right above objectivity. Like Kierkegaard says, it's like a hovering. Like you can get really, really close, right? So this is what this person said. I've actually received multiple, people from different places in different parts of the United States. And I had some good stuff said from North Idaho and from, different parts, of the world, really. But this one is the one that struck me when I asked about objective truth. It came to us in complete form.
Okay.
And so somehow the mysticism of objective truth then comes into play. Like, can I believe in the objective truth if I believe that it's just a mystical deliverance of the whole form? So somehow, like, this embodiment of truth was dropped, like, out of the sky, like tablets, right, into the forest. And I was a printer that went and got them. And I'm kidding.
I want to double check something. Yeah. You said it, referring to truth.
Mm-hmm.
So in this example, is this complete truth that was delivered? Is this truth Jesus, or is this truth the Bible?
The Bible, or objectivity in the Bible, portions of the Bible.
Gotcha. I'm less on board.
I know. I had to think about that one for a while. I think that that's what most people believe.
Yeah.
Most people? I mean...
Most Christians?
Most people that just even have this discussion. What is objective and subjective truth? No, I would say most people.
Atheist, agnostic.
Well, like, for example, gravity. The truth of gravity.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty dropped out of the sky.
Oh, yeah. It's
right?
Empiricism.
Right. I mean, it's just like, did aliens plant it there? How did we get gravity? Just kind of dropped out of the sky. Biological processes, the mystery behind, the human body and physiology and anatomy, even evolution. Where did that even start? Dropped out of the sky. So the same is true in Christianity, where some of these ideas just dropped out of the sky. But the problem with believing that is most of the ideas that we read in Scripture didn't drop out of the sky. You can trace them back to the original forms. And you could say, well, what is the original form then? Well, that's where the mystery and the mysticism into oral tradition and way back, these stories were told in whole form. And I remember hearing this stuff now that I think about it, even in real time now. We used to, take theological classes that talked about oral tradition in whole form, which I do believe that there was an oral tradition that was given in some kind of form. But in my studying of even David, we believe that pieces of or Exodus, people believe that story is historical.
Right.
And that story, in a sense, dropped out of the sky as a truth and a historical, accurate, telling. I have a problem with that. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Because even the story of David, is
The story of David. Keep going.
I can't. I don't have the time to unpack that, so that wouldn't be fair to anybody listening.
You said it twice.
But also on the other end, we're still reading the text through our perspective. So
well, yeah, that's
a
that's a Kierkegaardian. I'm hovering over. I'm getting close. But that objectivity dropped kind of out of we received it in whole form. So for example, some people believe in the received text. The Latin Vulgate is the received text, the whole form of the Bible given to us by God. So that is the objective truth of life, the rule of life.
Right. So what? We're still reading it from our perspective.
Yeah, I know. Let's talk about that next week, because we'll get into David next week.
Yeah.
Because that's my whole illustration about truth, objectivity, subjectivity. So maybe blow your minds a little bit. I don't know. All right. If we do this thing, then we will see that happen, which will lead to this, and which will result in that outcome that we want to see. So let's start with origin, Sharia. Give us your origin idea again.
Okay. You want me to read the whole thing?
Sure.
Okay. I believe that humans are created by God through evolution. We are from the earth and part of the earth, an interbeing with everything. I come from a culture that tells me I am separate and superior. This is the privilege piece. And a biblical tradition that tells me I am interconnected, and I strive to embody the biblical voice.
Okay, so you set privilege or superiority against interdependency. That's what I hear. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so privilege, superiority set against interdependency, community.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I do superiority, then what will we see happen?
A bunch of fights breaking out.
Yeah.
Destruction.
Empire. Which will lead to what?
Inequality, oppression.
Pain.
Right.
Unhappiness.
Basically,
which will result in what outcome?
A continual striving to be the one in power.
And a constant anxiety, I think, that just kills us off. Yeah. Let me look up something really quick. The thing that I'm thinking about when I think about superiority is there's a movement. I want to actually see that if it's a movement, because I'm not sure it actually is. Let me try to look this up. Oh, goodness. Yeah. It's actually just kind of a website, and they sell t-shirts and stuff. So, but it's a trademarked logo and stuff. It's the Lions Not Sheep movement. And we're called to be sheep, but all of a sudden we see a lot of Christians out there. And anyone can make a t-shirt, Anyone can state anything on a t-shirt if they wanted to, I guess. Some things are hurtful and some things are unloving, but that's the world. The nation we live in, you can put most things on t-shirts and get away with it. I think that there's certain things you can't, but we'll just leave those for the courts to figure out. So
is it meant to be a Christian thing?
Well, I don't think so.
Okay.
It actually doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter because Christians, I see, have adopted this. And so we have like a t-shirt, Lions Not Sheep, and then we wear crosses, or we go to church with these t-shirts on, or we have, a cross in the back of our window of our car, and we're claiming lions, not sheep. The problem with that is that we've been called to be sheep. Jesus is the shepherd, and we are the sheep, and we are to follow Jesus, right? But the claim is that we are the lion and that lions kill sheep. We're stronger. We have a superiority complex. So let's send that through the test. This is your superiority complex.
Right.
You nailed it. So if we are lions and not sheep, then what will we see happen?
I think the answers are the same.
Let's go through those answers again.
Yeah. You keep fighting. You get destruction. You get hurt.
Which will lead to
inequality and oppression.
Which will result in an outcome. Can I answer this one?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I think it's hell.
Yeah.
On Earth.
Yep.
I think it's hell.
Sure sounds like it.
When we put empire ahead and superiority and pride of life ahead, as scripture tells us that one of the main sins is the pride of life. When we put that ahead of the humility, submission, grace, and forgiveness of Jesus, and following that example as a sheep is led by the shepherd, we see hell. That is truly hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's getting back into slave chains. Like Paul said that we are that the chains have been broken. That we are back in those chains like the Israelites with oppression.
For everybody, because even if you're on top, you still have anxiety.
Oh, you're probably weighted with not only chains, but weights on the chains at that point. Totally. Okay, well, let's take what's the second part? Interdependency or interrelationship. So if we have interdependency, so you said the hard thing is interdependency. So if we do interdependency, if we have interrelationship, then what will we see happen?
In Daniel Erlander's words, everyone has enough and no one has too much.
Okay. All right. I think we'll see community.
Yeah.
Peace. I think your theology of peace goes very deep in this point.
Yeah. Which leads to
peace.
Yeah.
True. Maybe the same. But then what's
heaven.
The outcome? Yeah, there you go. It leads to heaven.
Shalom. I mean, so
shalom, yeah.
What I like about the idea of shalom, like peace is a really flat translation of that word, right? Because peace like comes across as the absence of fighting.
Right. As long as we're not conflict, we're at peace, yeah.
Whereas shalom is more this idea of almost synergy or harmony, like when things are working in shalom, working together, you end up at a greater result than any one piece could have on its own.
Yeah.
The sum of the whole is greater than the some individuals.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take your other one, leaving it better than we found it.
Yeah.
It, them.
All of it.
The earth, all of it. All of them, all of it.
I think it is okay.
Okay.
Just say it.
It. For now, let's just say it. Because we understand what it is. Well, as long as we understand it.
So like the first part of that is showing love, right? And
right.
We show love to more than just humans.
Paisley.
Yeah. So like I suppose it is already implied.
Okay. So if we leave it better than we found it, then we will see what happened.
It's going to be cleaner.
Okay.
I think you go back to Sharea's everyone has enough and no one has too much.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we leave everything better than we found it, pack it in, pack it out, whatever you want to say. It's not about you getting ahead at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about what you leave behind, not take with you.
Yeah.
So I was in a discussion with a leader last night, and very good, strong leader. Her name's Debbie. And she was talking about employers make their employees do tasks, but leaders that are employers help their employees be leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the same idea, leave it better than you found it, right? Like you're investing in people. And I think that all tides rise in the harbor and all boats float when we leave it better than we found it. That people grow in their knowledge, they grow in their abilities, they grow in their perceive what they feel is success in their life. Not necessarily money success. I'm just saying just perceived success in their life. When you leave it better than you found it. And I would call that purity. That's a concept of purity. I'm giving something to you to help increase your life, versus impurity would be I'm giving something to you to degrade your life.
Right.
Or taking from you.
Yeah.
Especially so that I don't have to do it to make my life better.
Right. So if we do that, then this will happen, which will lead to what? Leaving it better than we found it.
We still arrive at peace and shalom, don't we?
Well, I think yes, but that's the other part of shalom, that others can partake. So that is part of shalom, that we're living in harmony enough that it's not necessarily only just now about the four of us. So we have shalom, but the idea of shalom is more community broad. And so the next outsider, foreigner that's welcomed in, right, can take part in the shalom as well. So I think about the campsite. I wasn't joking about the campsite. You pick up your poop and trash out of the campsite. Why? So that the next camper can come in and they can use the campsite. So you leave it better than you found it, or the trail or whatever, so other people can enjoy. The same as with the foreigner being allowed, or the foreigner being welcomed in. They can enjoy peace and harmony and generosity as well. Yeah. And so that results in heaven. So I think that tonight we kind of nailed something, that we can send our statements and our thoughts and our ideas through this filter, the theory of action. And if we conclude heaven, that the result and the outcome that we want to see is heaven on earth. If we conclude heaven on earth, then I believe that our theories or our philosophy or our worldview can be to the test that the result is heaven. If the result is hell, we need to change what we're saying and in our approach with our worldview. Okay. Wow, that was a lot. We only had a chance to do 2 in our hour and a half. And so we're going to end with that. Gosh, thanks, Sharea, for doing that this week. And allowing us to be a part of your thinking there. Really appreciate your wisdom. So what we're going to do next week is we're going to pick it up with the theory of knowledge, and we're going to talk about truth, objectivity, subjectivity, tacit knowledge, the theory of knowledge, and we're going to talk through normative, communal hermeneutic. We're going to talk through all kinds of things.
It's going to be a few weeks, probably, I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Probably 2 weeks. We'll probably spend 2 weeks on that, and then we're going to conclude it. And Jake will have a surprise for us in the end, where we've already talked about only getting through 2 worldviews, and then he's going to present his when we put the building blocks together at the last podcast. So you're going to hear more about this subject, at least presented at their very end. All right. I really appreciate both of your thoughts. Thank you, Jake and Sharia, for participating tonight. And with that, we'll sign off. Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night.